latest racing news. It's At the Races with Steve Bick on Sirius XM Radio.
Why, in the past decade, has BRL Equine become the premier equine supplement company in the industry? Because we spend millions in research and development before we ever put out a product. Because we use only FDA-supervised facilities to manufacture for us. Because what we say is in them is in them. Because they work. Because if you're not happy, I'll give you your money back. And because top trainers and veterinarians in thoroughbred racing, standardbred racing, 3-day eventing, and barrel racing all trust in BRL Equine. Shouldn't you? To find out more how Flexify HA, Unlock, Bleeder Shield, and EPO Equine can help you, contact me, Joseph Volante, 215-501-6880.
There's a great story to tell in Pennsylvania. Only 3 states have produced more Breeders' Cup champions, and no state can match our performance in recent years. Since 2016, our numbers of mares bred has skyrocketed, unlike the national trend. And this year's Live Foal report shows Pennsylvania up over 50%. Why? Our incentives and bonuses are the best in North America. Please visit us at pabred.com and see why Pennsylvania is the premier place to breed and race.
Horsebills.com is a cost-effective, time-saving paperless revolution. Vendors are able to generate electronic invoices for owners and other vendors who can pay through Horsebills.com for just 50 cents. Turn hours of work into minutes with our easy-to-use site. Have our team take over your bookkeeping or continue to do it yourself and pay only our low monthly subscription fee. Check out our video tutorial on the Horsebills.com YouTube channel and get started today for free. Horsebills.com. Toll-free number 888-938-4643.
Now, back to At the Races with Steve Bick on Sirius XM Radio.
Let me go. Don't wanna be alone. And let the music pump right through me. I can feel it in my bones. Got to get up to get it all out. And let the rhythm take a hold. Watch me shake it all out. I feel release me, set me free. Let the fire burn in me. I feel release me and set me free. Let the fire burn in me.
We're back at the races. Haven't heard this in forever. And this is Zoe. Oh my gosh, Zoe. I'm going to forget her last name. That's from deep in the stacks of ATR wax. I'm just noticing from Nick Luck, actually, in addition, I hadn't even talked about the first race as we wait for Hammer. He in some other analysis, he also liked the first winner, who was a short price, and a short field as well. So Nick, but he gave us the Nillier the other day on Monday, and awfully nice pick. So I hope people took advantage of that too, and Kev, of course, with Belfast Banter. Yeah. Well, Case, did you try both numbers, or let me because Hammer's writing to me. He says that he was expecting. So let me ask him which. Because it's going straight to voicemail. Okay, all right. Well, this is I don't know, Arkansas. It's an adventure for Hammer on the phones. So we'll see. No, we've got somebody. Is it Ed or is it Hammer? Ah, it's Hammer. There we go. Hammer.
Hello.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Where are you? Rick?
Yeah, I hear you now. We should be good.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because this is an adventure.
It's a little different. But anyway, good to hear from you. Not a whole lot to talk about on our end this week. As you know, we had a big weekend last week, and the weather cooperated, and the horses cooperated, and hopefully it was as good a show from out there as it was on track.
No, it was fun. It was a good day. Yeah, absolutely. Everything. I mean, I suppose the upset, the Carlos L in the Temperance Hill, that was the one that you had to really figure out. But otherwise, it put on a great show.
Yeah, and we talked about that race, and talked about the need to have some speed. Just went to the wrong one. I thought we thought maybe the Brad Cox horse was going to get the lead, but he didn't. And guess what? The horse on the lead won another 1.5 mile race. It happens a lot, and it did again. So the Baffert story continues. There was a story somewhere that he sends his best here for the Rebel. So like I said, we talked about, we've seen this act before, and it's just amazing. The horse just looked the part and ran the part and did it again. And I assume we'll see him back here in for the Arkansas Derby as well. And move on. It's time. It's like you talked about. It's Louisiana's time, and it's also this time of year when you start following some horses, especially the 3-year-olds, and it's a bit of a herd mentality sometimes, and I always watch out for it. Where we have a horse coming along, and he's doing well, and then he'll lose a race, and all of a sudden everybody gets off him, and they come back weeks later, and the price goes up. So, Thunder Gulch to me is that ultimate situation like that, where the horse went off at 2-1 in the Florida Derby, and then went to Keeneland and ran got beat, ran fourth, and then goes off at 25-1 in the Kentucky Derby 3 weeks later. So keep your eye on some of those horses. They can't win them all, but you see that 1 week somebody's on top and they lose, and then you forget about them, or the press forgets about them, and they show up later 8-10-1. So keep your eye on horses like that. I don't have one especially in mind, but I always, this time of year, I see this, and anyway, something to watch out for.
No, a point well made, and that's the formula. And as somebody who was on Thunder Gulch, I endorse that concept. Good call, Rick. Looking at the action. You got the gazebo, and there is, of course, the cross country pick 5, and we'll talk about that with Nick Tamero in a little bit. But any thoughts about anything on your end?
Just the 303. Is your volume turned up? I'm really having a hard time hearing you.
I as far as I know, I mean,
okay.
That's under Casey's. That comes to you, through the board.
Okay, no problem. With this little, to have the big weeks, you got to take a breather in some of the other weekends. So we have the old 3-year-old sprint race, the gazebo. Nothing special. Brett Calhoun, sons went up from the fairgrounds game day play. Looks like could be a good one. Steve Asmussen, of course. You're never going to see a stake go by without him being involved. Wayne Lucas in there. It's amazing sometimes you forget some of the trainers we have on site here. And sometimes when it comes down to Asmussen, you look and see who Santana gets on, and he's on Cazadero on the outside, who's the morning line favorite, coming back from an effort in Saratoga Special. And like many of these top big trainers, they don't give them one. They're ready to run when they come back to the races. So, take a look at those 3 game day play coming up for Brett Calhoun from the fairgrounds. Looks interesting here, but nothing fantastic. on the plate, but we'll get ready, for the next up and coming weekends. But the weather's been was good last week. We had a tornado warning earlier in the week, and it's getting cold, and it's not getting cold, and all kinds of stuff. So if you it's very East Coast this year. If you don't like the weather, the old wait an hour and it'll change. But all good. It's nice to see Tommy Ventura and the crew down there at OBS have a good sail. And after the year of being cooped up, the crowds are starting to being allowed to come outside. So, everyone's starting to feel pretty good.
Nice. Well, Hammer, the one thing I got to fold in, too, before we go, I saw somebody inviting a head-to-head for you and I. Are they excited about Arkansas later today? Arkansas-Colgate?
I don't get too excited about a whole lot here in town, but once again, that's right. The NCAA tournament is coming back, and that was that's like the rebirth. Everyone could come out of their shell, but I think as a state they do. A lot of people wearing red. Not too many people wearing green the other day, but there's a few people wearing red. So I think if they get on the board and like someone said, who we playing? Some toothpaste out there? And I said, oh, boy, good thing Steve didn't hear that. But if they win, I think they'll be pumped up a little bit more. They're 3. I think, what are you guys, a 14?
Yeah.
So I think the whole country's going to be excited when their first game tips off. I think this is kind of one of the signals that we're coming back.
Nice.
And I got my first shot the other day, so I'm kind of pumped up about
that's right.
that.
You said you did.
I was out hiking and got a text from someone at here and said, show up at the fairgrounds. Get there as soon as you can. I did, and got the first shot. So happy about that. And everyone just feels a little bit better. You can see it in their eyes and in their steps. So let's keep moving forward and let's rock.
Hammer, enjoy the weekend, and another quiet one next week at Oaklawn as well. But the racing continues to be good, and the apple blossoms are going to begin to pop. So spring is coming to the Washitas.
Spring has sprung, as they say. So everyone, have a great weekend, everybody. Talk to you next week, Steve.
Thanks, Hammer. There you go. Little kind of a quick hit. Oaklawn report, and I can tell you that when Nick joins us, we'll look at the 6th, 7th, and 8th as well, because those are it's kind of an unusual sequence. 2 maiden 50s and a 10 non-3 that are part of their full fields, 12 by 11 by 12, and then the 2 races from New York, the 8th and 9th. Is this week's cross country, and of course last week, one winner. We happen to know it's 2 people that had 1 ticket out of New Orleans. In fact, I was hoping actually that we might coerce the winner to join us, but I think they're going to stay anonymous, as it turned out. Let's turn to. I think we got Scully so far and no Ed yet. All right, we'll find Ed in the next hour, and we'll get his because he's. If I know Ed, he's having breakfast somewhere. Maybe at the Houday Cafe in the Marigny that I suggested to him, and he went and loved it. So we'll find Ed before we get off the air. Scully joins us for his action this week. James, quick survey of your Kentucky Derby report from the week.
Sure. Good morning, Steve. Thanks for having me on. Concert Tour, I thought looked terrific, winning the Rebel Stakes. I thought he really took a big step forward off of that San Vicente win. Loved the turn of foot he showed on the far turn to put the field away, and then just, really rolled home impressively, basically under a hand rod. I will say he did have everything his own way in that race, but I think the fact of the matter that in the San Vicente he sat third early. He showed good tractability in that race. I think a race like the Rebel, it's just, for his first 2-turn start, he's just going to keep advancing and progressing off that race. And, he's a major contender for the Kentucky Derby right now. I will mention, I'm a big believer sometimes in just looking at these sentimental angles, and I do think Gary and Mary West, it'd be fantastic to see them, be major players in the Derby, considering all they've done, their involvement in the sport. and the fact that they got disqualified with maximum security in 2019.
Yeah, that script is going to write itself essentially. All right. Well, let's not waste any time then and get into Louisiana Derby and this strong card at Fairgrounds and what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think I'm a big believer in the 3-year-olds. I think some years are better than others in Louisiana, and this is one of the best years so far at this point that, in my recollection. And I do think Mandaloon is the horse to beat. I think he's a serious Kentucky Derby contender for Brad Cox if, he continues to run well on Saturday. But my top choice is Proxy. And I'll echo some points I'm sure other people have made this morning and this week on the show. I thought even in the Lecomte, he raced a little bit in and out in the stretch, and Mandaloon went right by him in mid-stretch, got like a head or a neck in front of him. He got back on track late, re-rallied for second there. And then, last time I did think that when he was in the midst of his rally turning into the stretch, he just lost his focus. And once he got it back, you could really see how well he finished up to be second, hit the wire full of run. I think the blinkers will move him forward for Stidham. And, I did listen to Marcus Hirsch earlier. He made a good point about Mystic God last year for Stidham, how much he improved with blinkers. And obviously Mandaloon in the Risen Star really moved forward with him as well. So I like Proxy. He's my top choice in the Louisiana Derby.
Who would you use with?
I would use him, obviously Mandaloon I think is going to run well, but I do think Run Classic is the most interesting horse from a vertical exotic sense because I do think that colt has a lot going for him for Brett Calhoun.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I do sense that somebody is going to break into the obvious contenders, beyond Mandaloon, Proxy, Hot Rod, and a little Midnight Bourbon. It just feels like there's a window here for an improving type. And I it's funny, after they drew and one of the advantages of these Fairgrounds cards is you're so out in front of it. But once I started looking at some pace things too, I thought Obisos had maybe as good a shot as Run Classic to be a part of this. And my sense, the more I looked, the more I got the feeling that Obisos is going to be a better turnback type, long term. So he's certainly going to get the acid test going. Going a mile and 3/16, that's for sure. So we'll see.
And the other one I'll mention as well, really just sort of underneath for the vertical exotics, is Starring in My Dreams, just because he did win. Those races weren't the fastest races at Churchill Downs last fall, but you don't expect to see a Dallas Stewart horse win first out like he did. He beat a pretty decent field when he came back and won that entry-level allowance. And he just lost all chance early. He got off to a slow start, and he had all kinds of trouble in traffic at the Risen Star. So you draw a line through that, look for him to be a lot more fit. He could make at least a minor impact potentially.
Well, we talked to Dallas the other day, and he remained very confident. He wasn't shaken by the issue coming out of the Risen Star. He put a line through it, he said. All right, what else we playing, James?
Okay, well, in the Fairgrounds Oaks, I'm going to go with the Travel Column over Clairiere. One thing about Clairiere, granted, she did get off to a slow start, but she saved every ground, every inch of ground in that in the Rachel Alexandra last time. Travel Column was wide on the first turn for post 8. She was wide on the second turn. I thought that Clairiere, was a little bit fortunate to slip up the inside. She got she did get a space to go, and she earned it for sure. But I look for Travel Column, a little bit of has a tactical advantage, it appears on paper. I look for her to move forward off of that effort in the Rachel Alexandra. I will point out, one thing about these fillies is that race did not come back that fast, but it's just because the internal fractions were just so slow. They went 114 and change that day. Anybody expected Clairiere to come home and run some gaudy speed rating after those internal fractions isn't being realistic. I do think those fillies are the class of the field, and they're going to be major players in the Kentucky Oaks this spring.
Okay, what else?
And, in the New Orleans Classic, I really thought that. I'm sorry, in the Muniz Memorial, I really just thought that Colonel Lim just fits the non-furlong trip perfectly. I think like 9 furlongs to 10 furlongs is his perfect distance. I really liked his 2 races this year. Granted, in that Pegasus World Cup turf, he did get a good trip. But, he was coming back off of a sharp win off the layoff in the Tropical Park Derby. Pletcher ran him right back 4 weeks. He's now freshened him up for this race on Saturday. I look for Colonel Lim to really run well as the favorite with Irad Ortiz.
I can't. I don't actively bet against him per se, but I also haven't really, bet him right, and he just keeps improving. It's pretty amazing. How about the New Orleans Classic?
The New Orleans Classic is a little interesting to me because there is no pace in the race, it looks like, on paper. But I will say that last year, I thought both in the Ali Sheba and in the Pimlico Special that Owendale, even in the Pimlico Special, he's on the lead, right from the start. That horse, in a sense, has taken advantage of just like glacial pace situations before and been more forward. He's eligible to get the trip in there. To me, Roadster is the real wild card in here. I know he's 3-1 on the morning line. The kind of horse I'd like to see, what his odds are, when the race is coming up, because I do expect him to run well coming back for Stidham in this spot. I thought last year, after he finished second in the Malibu in 2019, I just don't think something was right with him when he came back in the San Pasqual and San Carlos, especially at San Pasqual. He just dropped way out of the running early. And he's just training so well. And I just think that with John B. taking them out, he's going to get a good tactical trip up close to the pace. And I'm going to give him a little bit of an edge.
All right.
In the Tom Benson, obviously Delika, got it done last time. But, this is a mare, a 5-year-old mare that has never strung together consecutive wins in her career. We saw it, too, back in that Marie Krantz where she ran 5th at short odds. A little bit, her consistency is a little bit of a concern. It's a tough field, but I wound up landing on number 10, Winning Envelope. And, we saw Chris Block basically take Captivating Moon back from dirt to turf last time and score at a price. And I look at Winning Envelope as sort of in the same vein where she might be a little bit overlooked off of all those sprint efforts. I don't blame the connections because she did run well sprinting last summer. I don't blame them for pursuing that angle. But her last win came at 1 1/16 last winter at Sam Houston. She won easy that day. The 1 1/16 distance is going to be no problem for her. And I look for her to really just, improve on the stretch out and distance. And she's going to be, I think, a solid value, 8-1 on the morning line with Jose Ortiz.
Excellent. It's a tough race, I'll tell you.
It really is. That's a race where, for the pick 5, you could definitely, that's a race where I will have all on one ticket because it's sort of like you always have the potential for a little bit chalky in these other stake races. And that's the one race where it looks like you just definitely have a chance at a bomb in there, Steve.
Anything else elsewhere on the card? Or
yeah, I'll mention 2 maidens real quick. Race number 2, a lot of people are talking about a couple of these races that Southland and others came out of. But I look at this number 6, Happy American. I really like the move. After just 3 efforts where he just really didn't pick up his feet much, he was just so far back. I really thought he made a sharp middle move last time in that Run Classic maiden race. It looked like to me he was in with a chance at the top of the stretch. He did flatten out a little bit, but he was almost 5 lengths clear of 4th that day. That was a very, very, I think, sneaky performance by him there. And I think if he can stay a little bit closer in the early going tomorrow, he's got a big chance in race 2, and he's listed at 8-1 on the morning line with James Graham.
Excellent.
And one more, race 5. I like first Find New Roads. A little bit of an angle where he was the favorite last time. Got off the slow start, didn't fire. I thought that was a nice race. Mount Athos ran well that day for Norm Cassie. The runner-up, Multa Vivazzi, came back and broke her maiden his maiden at Oaklawn on the Southwest undercard for Steve Asmussen. that fine new roads could be overlooked off that effort, and it's eligible to outperform its 12-1 morning line odds.
Wow. That's another new name in a race that that is expected to be very productive. I mean, between Tulane Trist and Frank
Mississippi looks interesting for sure for Joe Sharp, and that's a tough little race.
That was Marcus's horse, and Frank McGoey liked Continental Coins and Cool House, and I had Amos, and there's nothing wrong with Wild for Wycliffe. So the maiden races. I mean, obviously the State Pick 5 is a focus, but the maiden races are going to be really fun. It's a great card, start to finish. Anything last-minute Friday push?
Yeah, I've got a pick at Fairgrounds today. Number 8, Park Ridge Benny, and race 7. The 8 and race 7, 6-1 on the morning line. I like this gelding enters on the upswing for Bernie Flint.
Any? It's a little late, maybe not necessarily. Any lines? Any money line plays today and tomorrow?
Well, I mean, I like Ohio plus the points today. I'm going to play some underdogs. I've played some teams. I bet Texas to win their regional, and those are some of my plays. I definitely looking at some dogs, though. I think there's going to be some good dogs, or actually Ohio tomorrow. I like Winthrop today versus Villanova. And then, like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing how Texas does. They're like a Final Four sleeper for me in the tourney, Steve.
Good job. All right, James. I appreciate it, and we'll check in next week with a big Saturday ahead with Turfway, Maidan, and Gulfstream. James _Scully, everybody, 111, and the team at Brisnet and Twin Spires. We'll stay right here. We're about 12, 13 minutes in and got plenty yet to do. Nick Tamero standing by. Nick, good morning. Well, that didn't sound good.
Now I'm there. Good morning.
There we go. All right. I guess that was actually James cutting out. That was wrapping up. I got to mention also, by the way, as we continue to keep an eye on Cheltenham, not only did Nick, for those that noted Vanillier in that Bartlett novice, winning it ended up 16-1, but Kev had come back in his plays today. He included that Oscar Elite, who was second at $1,000,000-1, and it was $1,000 exacta if you put together Nick Luck and Kev's players in that third at Cheltenham. Unbelievable. It's been a banner Cheltenham for the long shot lad. You've met Kev over the years, haven't you?
I have not. I've conversed with him online. I've actually never met him. I think the Breeders' Cups that I went to, he wasn't at, and kind of vice versa. But, I mean, if one thing that's clear now about any kind of big European racing, or not even European, but international racing, is that if he's got an opinion, it's one worth following, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I've been very, very impressed with it.
No, he's got a unique vision, and it's easy enough to figure out who the contenders are typically with these kinds of stands, whether it's Ascot and so forth, and in this case Cheltenham. But it's finding these 40-1 shots and 30-1 shots. I mean, the Belfast Banter, for him to tab that horse, that's one that I don't know. I mean, you've got to literally be on top of the entire chase and hurdle season and scene to be aware that horse has a legitimate win chance. That's what's amazing.
It certainly was worth following for Kev, no doubt about it.
Well, same can be said, Nick, as we look at these cross-country pick fives. Last week, one winner, and we figured out during the week, courtesy of our friends in New Orleans, that it was two guys in New Orleans that put $120 each up and put in a $240 ticket, and they end up taking down the $108,000 pick five.
Good for them. I mean, it was not easy by any means. and you had a few sweats. Not so much in New York, but at Oaklawn, I think putting some of those winners together was a little bit difficult. The non-stake race that we discussed from that Oaklawn card was probably the one that was very tricky. Florent Giroux wired it for Mike Maker. I forget the horse's name, but the horse went off 8-1. Was kind of tough to get to, I thought, all in all. But yeah, it's we talk about these weekly, and the sequences are very, very difficult. I mean, tomorrow's looks borderline impossible. We're not going to try, but it looks very, very hard. And these races to me look like Oaklawn. It's kind of funny. Before, really up until like the end of March last year, I was doing well playing Oaklawn. And then as the pandemic set in and Oaklawn was the only thing, I had probably one of the worst months betting I ever have in April after the second week. So it was really like 3 weeks, I guess. And it was because I looked at these races like tomorrow's, and my head started to spin. It's very, very hard. It's a very, very hard place to bet. It's very rewarding, but yeah, it takes quite a bit of courage. Sometimes which I don't have, and I'm happily admit that I'm a weakling in that respect. But yeah, I mean, it is at Oaklawn last week, to actually recap it. Special Reserve was the horse who I was trying to think of. Obviously, Carlos L was the problem. And Carlos L paid $97.40 to win the Temperance Hill. He wired the field, which, it's one of those old things about distance racing. It's actually quite a bit easier to do things from the front end, and everybody who thinks that just because there's more ground, it's going to be easier for closers, that's not the case. So he actually got a great ride from Alex Conchari, who I think is an underrated jockey, and otherwise really spiced up what was a pretty formful slate. I know that Special Reserve paid $18, and Sadie Lady paid $13. Litterbox paid $12.20. Sadie Lady was a horse that by the time the sequence was coming together, you probably had to give her a little bit of an extra look because it seemed pretty clear the rail was good, and she was absolutely all out to beat the longest shot on the board with a good inside hugging trip. It was one of those where if you bet Sadie Lady, you're living right, because she was bad and she still won, mainly because of the track profile. So hopefully we'll be dealing with a fairer surface at Aqueduct today and this weekend. It was a pretty decided inside bias most of last week. That's something we've been talking about now for the better part of a month or so. And I think as the temperatures warm up, maybe we'll see things start to break a little bit. But yeah, it really does require you to pay attention to those first couple of races every day. And there's a smattering of people you can follow on Twitter that'll alert you to it. But it's been... The results that have happened have been difficult in terms of, you get these random bias deniers. There was an article written last month that I had provided some quotes for about the bias over President's Day weekend, and they interviewed a prominent clocker, or somebody that sits in a clocker stand and masquerades as a clocker, who said that there was actually no bias over the weekend, which was preposterous, and obviously was the handiwork of someone who had simply looked at charts and maybe watched a couple of replays, because it's been going on very regularly. So you want to be hip to it. You don't want to catch on too late. And most importantly, you want to know which horses you want to bet moving forward, because the best thing about a bias is that it creates a ton of bet backs.
Right. No, and that continues to be, Andy talks about it, on a regular basis. And it's not an easy thing. Some people just assume that, you watch 2 or 3 races and you see horses wiring. Well, you got to go back and look and see if they figured to wire. I mean, it's not, very, very often if you go back and look and you realize, oh, well, that horse was 5-2, that horse was 9-5. It wasn't so much the track as it was the conditions of the competition.
Right, and I'll tell you one of the other things about an inside bias, that there are probably, I guess, 2 things that are handled on a regular basis or handled erroneously by the public, one of which is that an inside bias equals a speed bias. That's not necessarily the case, especially because modern riders stay farther off the rail than they did years and years ago. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's just going to be speed. The other thing is that one of the things we've seen pretty regularly in New York of late is that you'll see a horse that hugs the inside most of the first, let's say 6 furlongs of a mile race, and then angles out at the top of the stretch. That horse rode the bias. anybody who thinks that because they angled out at the quarter pole, suddenly it negated them taking advantage of it, that's not true, because we spending time on the inside, whether it was in the final 3 furlongs, the first 4 furlongs, the middle 3 furlongs, that's what you want to do. So, think about, the most high-profile, strong bias you're going to find of the last 5 years was 2019 Belmont weekend. And look at horses that were significantly helped by being inside, and look at all the subsequent Grade 1 winners that were wide, right? Cece's one that comes to mind, and in the Acorn had a horribly wide trip, and ended up struggling because of it. So, yeah, that's what you have to do. That's what you have to look at, and you have to understand the race in context, as you're saying. If a 3-2 shot went wire to wire, that doesn't mean it's a gold rail, right? But what about a 20-1 shot that rode the inside, and when the field kind of separated off the inside down the stretch, they came up the rail to grab second? Well, then you need to keep an eye on it moving forward, because it looks like a situation where things might be tilting a certain direction.
Absolutely. No, points well made. All right, Nick, let's run down. Give a walkthrough of this pick 5.
Yeah, it starts at Oaklawn with a tremendously difficult maiden claiming race, the 6th, which is a $50,000 maiden claimer. The horses that have started don't really look like much of an impressive lot. I will say that the one Divine Choice took a little bit of money at Fairgrounds on debut, really seems to have made out poorly at the post position draw being inside, takes the biggest class drop in racing, of course, which is always a good thing. Same can be said for Emerald Princess, who took pretty solid money on debut as well. It was only a 6-horse field, but did get some support at the windows and didn't run poorly, showed speed, faded late. This is a horse I think will improve with a race behind her, and so I'm expecting her to run better. Favoritism is pretty much unknown, I would say, at this point. I think the morning line is the morning line favorite's 3-1. Northern Diamond looks like no bargain. First off, a claim for Federico Villafranco off of Norman McKnight. Emerald Princess was kind of the one, if I had to make a top pick, that's where I'd land. I thought that she had every right to improve off of that decent debut. The first-time starters are about what you'd expect, right? Nothing terribly impressive as far as maiden claimers go. Not anymore. Looks like a horse that could be ready early. Obviously, Progeny of Golden Sense farewell on debut, so not going to be surprised. And if this filly's taking some money, best thing you can say about this race is at least it's the first leg, so you can see how the betting's going.
If you had to, so Emerald Princess and A, who else?
Yeah, I would go 1, 4, 12 as A's, and I'd have a pretty significant list of backups. That would definitely include the 7 and 8 and the 2. Those 3 primarily.
All right, so 1, 4, 12 A, 2, 7, 8 B. Then we go to New York and the 8th.
Yeah, this is an interesting race. It feels like there's going to be a pretty big pace, and that might work well for some of the late runners. I feel like the horses coming out of the race that Steam Engine was disqualified in, that was an interesting race. There's actually a couple of races that pretty much everyone in here is coming out of, with the exception of Bustin Timberlake, who just so happens to be coming off a race where he earned a 99 Beyer speed figure. And I don't remember who was calling that day, but they did not try to use a little bit of a play on words with the name. I will say that Tony Kalo did a good job. If you want to watch the replay of Bustin Timberlake winning in October, he had a pretty clever line that he unleashed that day. I don't want to steal his thunder and say it on the show. I like Positisley. Positisley is a horse that really was up against it in terms of the track profile last time. He was very wide. You wanted to be inside on February 25th. This is now his 3rd start off a layoff. Ralph D'Alessandro has quietly had a very good winter. This is a horse who's going to be every bit of 12 or 15-1 if the field stays intact. There's a lot of early pace in here, so that's all I need to see. I would imagine that being inside Bustin Timberlake has to go. Steam Engine only has one way to go. Bronx Bomber's shown increased speed of late. Trevor McCarthy's been aggressive all winter. More Grateful has speed, and you'd have to think that even though Dylan Davis is not really much of a pace maven, a Dark Money has to be forwardly placed as well. I think Category 1's a little interesting as well. At 15-1, he's cutting back in distance. He's going to be most effective sprinting. So I want to use those 2 as A's. I'm obviously going to use Bustin Timberlake as an A. He didn't totally take advantage of the inside bias last time, but he was pretty inside placed much of the way. It was a very, very clever ride by Kendrick. So I'll have to use him just because he's in very good form, and Charlie Baker's a barn really has heated up of late. So this would be very clearly for me 259 as A's, and I'd use a couple of backups, probably not much more than maybe the 6 and 8 and the 1 Galani Brigade. That leads us into the 7th at Oaklawn, which is a 3-life claimer, and this is the kind of race I was talking about. You look at these horses' past performances, and the buyer figures are virtually all in the same range, and you've just got kind of differing versions of the same horse. It does look like the balance of power is more towards the outside. Mr. Oakley's getting a pretty significant class drop, second off a layoff for Norm McKnight. This is a barn that over the last couple of years at Oaklawn has really, really struggled, but this horse is now spotted where he can be effective. He is fancy drops in class, Archie bred, second off the layoff as well. Didn't get out of the gate cleanly and made up good ground. Likely will benefit from being drawn outside. I kind of felt like those two, along with Hanson's Mischief and Hidden Promise, were really where you needed to be. It looks like the strength of the field is all on the outside, so I'll use the 8, 9, 10, 11 as A's and hope to just get through it because it's that kind of race, I'd say. And the maidens in the nightcap at Belmont, Irresistible Girl ran a winning race last time, didn't exactly have the best of trips given the way the track was playing that day, probably moved a little early, really seems like an ideal candidate for the cutback. So this is a horse who should benefit from shortening up in distance, I would say, pretty substantially. And I would think that a lot of weary pick 5 players are going to look to kind of zoom in on Irresistible Girl, who I thought, if with any improvement off of that effort, would be pretty tough to beat. Worth mentioning that James Breeden debuted Black Panda last time, and she actually ran well, I thought. I think it was a better performance than I expected. This is a horse with good speed, an inside post, and the only other confirmed early speed is Esotica, who showed speed going longer. So I wouldn't blame anybody for trying to put Black Panda in the mix. Again, Trevor McCarthy is a guy that's been very astute when it comes to watching the racetrack and putting his horses in the right spot, and he's been increasingly aggressive as the meet has gone on, which I think will certainly benefit him in the long run. So that takes you back to Oaklawn for maidens in the final leg, $50,000 claimers. This is basically the male half of the earlier race, and it doesn't seem any easier, which why would we expect such a thing? Brad Cox is debuting Chicago Chrome for a tag. This is a horse who worked pretty well at the OBS April sale. I think that the horse to beat clearly is Megatap, who comes in off a good second-place finish against Lesser at Oaklawn. First-time fast track, if it ends up being so. I think you would want to use him. And, the wild card's on the outside. My Honey's Perfect, a son of Majestic Perfection for Larry Jones, who seems to be training well, looks to have bullet workouts left and right. Kelsey Haar's on board, which, you probably can expect this colt to be ridden aggressively, and he's going to take him as far as he can. So I thought the winner would probably come from those 3. I could see maybe using Awesome Charge, second-time starter who showed some life on debut. But, again, I mean, these are very, very difficult races to have a great deal. Oh, I forgot to mention Heartbreaker, who I liked as well for Phil D'Amato, second-time starter. These are just hard races to have a pretty strong opinion. So I think if you're playing the cross-country pick 5, maybe you do like the guys did last week. Hopefully you'll get that lucky, but find a friend and put in $100 or so a piece, because it just seems like something where if you're not well capitalized, you're just drawing dead.
Well, and that's what that's exactly what they did. I laid out the ticket, and what was amazing, you talked about Sadie Lady hanging on. They singled Sadie Lady.
Yeah, that's ballsy. But
Yep.
you got every time you find somebody with a ticket like that, they did something like that, right? I mean,
Right.
It required them to take a bold stand where probably everybody else was going a different direction.
Exactly. And before we adjourn, I mentioned that 6th and 7th today, Nick. Kind of a nice end of the card today in New York, and those are both of those races are worth watching. The 7/8 that includes Mr. Winston coming back for a 4-year-old debut, and how about Bank on Shea reappearing, and then there's a very good starter optional type thing going a mile as the 7th. What are you doing today in the 6th and 7th?
Yeah, these are a couple of nice races. I probably am too stubborn, and I'm going to try Edge of Fire one more time. I thought Edge of Fire ran very well behind Mr. Winston back in July, and he's come back subsequently and run 2 poor races. They were both on wet tracks. It was not a particularly wet track last time, but he was just a complete no-show. And the fact that Jimmy Jerkins is keeping him at this class level, I think is a good sign. Jimmy's barn obviously has heated up a little bit lately. He had Wayburn win the Gotham, and then Mijos won a nice allowance race last weekend. So I wanted to try Edge of Fire. Obviously, you have to use Mr. Winston in any of your multi-race plays. He's a horse that showed a great deal of talent in those first 2 starts, and then was very disappointing last time at Saratoga. But, Chad Brown had a rough meet, and there were a lot of horses that underperformed. I don't want to hold that against him too much. I think you can expect Bank on Shea will be a grown-up now. He's obviously hasn't been out for 13 months, now in the care of John Tyler Service, who is John Service's son, after being with the now indicted Jason Service in his first 4 starts. This is a horse who showed some talent. Obviously, you'd expect him to be a little bit sharper, maybe a little bit more polished now as a 4-year-old. 7th is a really cool race. I like Noctilucent for Jimmy Bond. This is another barn that when it gets hot, they win in bunches, and he had a couple of wins last weekend. This horse looks like he's drawn really favorably on the outside. And the only other speed is Blue Grotto, who's extremely dressed up. He was very helped significantly by a big inside bias last time, so I wanted to try Noctilucent. I would probably also use Civil War, who gets Lasix for the first time after facing much tougher in 3 of his last 4 starts. The only time he didn't face graded stakes company, was on a wet track at Aqueduct, so I think you can give him a little bit of an excuse for that day. He also raced inside that day when you wanted to be a little bit off the rails, so he's one I would use for sure, and I'm gonna try and box Noctilucent and Civil War, and just mainly use those 2 in the late picks.
It's a good card, and 2 very notable races. They came up the other day when I was talking to Andy, and I wanted to see what you were doing. And Nick's Aqueduct analysis available and in the money on the days that New York's running right now, which is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Turf is in the offing. We should have turf next week. Weather.
Woodweek or next week?
Next week. Oh no, you're right. I'm looking at the calendar.
Yeah, Woodweek. Right. 2 weeks basically from today.
April 2nd. Yeah.
Right. Well, next week's a 4-day week, so it was not supposed to be, but there's racing next Thursday to make up for some of the cancellations in February, and then it goes back to 4-day weeks in April, 2 of them, leading into the end of the meet, which happens on April 18th, I believe. Yeah, April 18th.
Nice. I'm certainly looking forward. We got all of our runners are waiting for turf opportunities. So the winter main track is over for us anyway at DT. So Nick, enjoy the weekend. Any basketball action that I know you're not the biggest sports bettor out there.
I'm probably the worst sports bettor out there, as a fair characterization. But I actually have followed very, very little of it. There are 7 teams from Texas in the tournament, so I will root for them to some extent. But I heard James talk about having Texas to win their regional, and they've been kind of a pleasant surprise. Baylor's also good. They've not been as good the last month or so, and I know I'll get chirped at a lot by Pat Cummings about that. So. I'm just going to watch. I watched the UCLA game last night and was pretty riveted by the second half. So, I'm probably somebody that can tell you a few kind words about sports, but as far as sports betting goes, you're best served looking down the line.
Nick Tamro, everybody. NTAM 1215. Nick, good luck. We'll talk next week.
Same to you, my friend. Take care.
Nick Tamro, folks. We'll stay right here. We got about 25 minutes and still looking for Ed. So if anybody sees Ed having breakfast or doing whatever he's doing, he's eating somewhere, I'm going to guess. He's wandering New Orleans. We got to find him. But Papo is hanging on the line for us, and Papo Morales, formtowin.com, and fresh off of yesterday afternoon's very productive tutorial on Twitch. Papo, good morning.
Good morning, Steve. Yeah, it was a fun session there on Twitch. Just giving a overview. What the thing that really got me was switching over to the Asia Pacific form and kind of running through those Hong Kong races, and without any filters, it Form to Win was finding winners and at decent prices. So I'm going to have to, back test that more myself and start maybe playing into those pools.
Well, our friend Brian on Thursday morning or Wednesday morning was killing it at Happy Valley, and it makes perfect sense that the more, the kinds of races where horses are running regularly, that Form to Win is going to really be strong in terms of distilling that information, into a suggested pecking order, into the the FTW average.
Right, and yeah, obviously, the more form you have to work with, the more data and everything you can narrow down. But the great thing about Form to Win also is just being able to see it all relatively on one screen and not having to go through many pages, and just being able to sort and identify horses quickly.
Well, we don't have anything really to review per se, other than other people's success, and it's really nice to see the comments, and these are all. Everything that we're seeing, and if we congratulate people, it really feels, Papo, like people are figuring it out, with obviously with your help, but I really sense that people right away are like grasping what this is and what they can do with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we talked about, there's a learning curve, just seeing the data presented in a different way, but if once you get familiar with it, Steve, it's fairly easy to use. It's not very difficult. It's just clicking on some columns to sort them, and that's pretty much the extent of it. And you can set up your filters however you want to, and everybody will have a different angle in doing that. But we're really happy with the product and the ability that you can do it on your phone or your tablet. I mean, I use it on my desktop just because normally when I'm handicapping, I'm on my desktop, but I also have it on my phone. So when these tracks start to open and I'm going to the track, I have all the data that I need right there on my phone.
Well, let's get a couple of pushes, and Fairgrounds has been the topic. And you sent me a note, in fact, as you were listening, I think, to Marcus, and you clearly were pleased that he was stressing Joy Epiphora.
Yeah, Steve, I went in this morning and was looking at that card, and so on that race 10, that Tom Benson Memorial, going a mile and a 16th on the grass, I just set my filters looking at races between a mile and a 16th, and she was what we call one of those dual qualifiers, top on average Equibase and Form to Win, but she was actually ranked number one on Form to Win. I mean, she didn't get the best of trip last time out. She couldn't get out. Delika was actually blocking her in. But, at that price, I mean, I think I'm going to have to get involved with her. I mean, that's a contentious race. Catch a Bid was also ranked fairly high when I ran my filter through. Going to have to trip out from the 12th post. But, I wouldn't take a short price in that race for sure.
Talk about the 2-3-year-olds. Let's see, because I have not looked yet to see what the Derby and Oaks, what the analysis is producing.
Yeah, so once again, lightly raced these horses. So we're not looking at a ton of data, but the horse without any filters in the Fairground Oaks, that little Tootsie, she was ranked fairly high. I mean, number one. And then when I applied my filter looking at races between a mile and a mile and a 16th, which little Tootsie only had one race, but it had obligatory ranked number one. I just don't know what to do with that horse. Her and little Tootsie both coming off Lasix. Like we talked about last week, I'm still struggling how to analyze that form. And I don't know how deep, Steve, for the multis I want to go. But, Amos, he's a sharp trainer. He knows what he's doing. And he sounded fairly confident on your show earlier this week.
Yeah, I did.
Maybe a backup little Tootsie would be interesting. If this were a mile and an eighth, maybe not so much, but a mile and a 16th, I know the pedigree doesn't scream distance, but mile and a 16th, she should be okay.
I just opened up and went to the Derby, and what's unique, of course, is that we're going to go beyond a mile and an eighth, the mile and 3/16 distance, the Preakness trip, and that that's a variable. So when it comes to setting the filters, I actually, at first, I thought, let me try 8.5, and there's even horses that haven't even gone that far yet. So clicking it back to a mile includes everybody. And Run Classic scores out, frankly, which is very interesting because of the prices, he's the one that I'm most intrigued by anyway. I mean, obviously you're going to use the Mandaloons and if you have a predilection for Hot Rod Charlie and or Proxy, and then there's going to be people that are going to go back to Midnight Bourbon. But I have felt from, literally Risen Star Day that Run Classic was going to be the fun, interesting horse that was progressive heading toward this.
Yeah, I mean, he fits. I think he's going to get bet down some because I've heard a number of people that have mentioned him. The stretch, the stretch out to a mile and 3/16. I think it's not going to be beneficial for some of these horses. I don't know. I mean, I'm not so concerned about Run Happy on the top end. I mean, Chatain on the bottom half. I mean, even Hot Rod Charlie. I mean, out of an Indian Charlie Mayer, on a 3/16 is kind of pushing that, at least on the dam side. But they fit, on Form to Win. But once again, you're going to have to, kind of look into pedigree to see if they're gonna stretch out. I mean, honestly, the horse I'll probably key around will be Midnight Bourbon. I like this last race, and you read anything and the gallops out. I mean, some horses just gallop out great, and some horses don't. But I went back and watched the last, and after the wire, he was 3 clear. So, and he never looked comfortable in his last race, honestly, Steve. He did never look comfortable, and so I'll probably key around him. And I'm not going to, I'm going to get Dallas's horse involved. Dallas mentioned that horse to me a couple months ago before he even ran. So I'll have him in the mix somewhere also.
Interesting. All right. Well, Midnight Bourbon, so a little 7 and a little 1, and all right. Anything else that jumped out?
Just one more. That race 12, that mile and an eighth on the turf. Once again, I wouldn't take a short price on any of them. And Colonel Liam, the likely favorite. I even looked at the rags this morning. I mean, he's not running anything better than a lot of these in here. Not saying he can't run faster, but at a short price, I'd be interested in, Spooky Channel fits on Form to Win for Lynch. And I thought maybe he was purely a marathon horse, but he can get the mile and an eighth distance, and he fits on when I put in my filters for Form to Win. And the horse that absolutely does not necessarily fit on Form to Win, but just replay work. I'm going to try to get the 10 involved somewhere. Piece achieved. Not sure that he appreciated the yielding turf last time out. He was on the wrong lead coming down the lane, but when he switched back off past the wire, he had a good gallop out. So if we get firm to good, I know Cassie still believes in this horse. I think he can run well.
There's a lot of ways to go, and actually I just did a setting with the mile. I went, what did I go for the filter? I went 8.5 to 9, and Olympic Runner scores out well.
Yeah, top one. I mean, I was actually shocked to see that because I thought it was more of a mile and a 16th horse or a mile horse, but yeah, he fits on Form to Win. So it's contentious, Steve.
2 free races for everybody. Get downloaded. Go to your the download facility of your preference and download it. Phone, tablet. As it happens, desktop does have. There isn't. A lot of people these days don't do the desktop, but Form to Win has it, and 2 free races a day, and we'll keep holding your hand through this and get you acclimated. It's tossing out all kinds of prices, and more, and just as importantly, it's when it discounts horses that are going to be short prices. That to me is as valuable as anything, and I'm excited actually, looking ahead toward 4 a.m. On Sunday morning to the Hong Kong Derby, and I'm anxious to see what what the Shatin numbers say for the Hong Kong Derby, because I think we've got people excited about getting help on the action there. So Papo, I appreciate it. Good luck this weekend.
Hey, thank you, Steve. You too. I'll talk to you later.
Papo Core 1, formtowin.com. And we did find Ed DeRosa. And Ed, we didn't interrupt breakfast, did we?
No, breakfast was early, so got that out of the way. But have been working the barns here at Fairgrounds, and really appreciate all the trainers' times. And you were calling me, chatting with them on camera, so I apologize, but appreciate your perseverance.
Not at all. I wasn't. Listen, with you in town, I'm not going to miss a chance to get some, as Seth Merrow says, boots on the ground. Give us a feel heading in, and it's going to be a gorgeous day. It's a fabulous card, and if you want to start with the Derby, let's dig in.
Yeah, no, the chatter locally is the LeCompte and Risen Star trio right back at it, which is exciting. Probably be even more so if had allowed fans throughout the meet. People getting used to seeing those horses on the big days, but definitely still a buzz about them renewing their rivalry here, and have gotten a chance to talk to the top two this morning from the Risen Star, Brad and Michael, and obviously they're all in fine fettle and the usual trainer speak. But I will say, I thought Brad was uncharacteristically excited about Mandaloon. It seemed like he was really happy with the way he came into the race, more so than just the usual what you get out of trainers. Seemed pretty authentic to my poker playing observations. So do that with that information what you will, but in my mind, even as the chalk, I was kind of like, well, maybe I shouldn't be looking to beat this horse based on Brad's body language when we talked about him, and you can see the video for yourself a little later on Swinspires. But nevertheless, from a pick perspective, I did go with Hot Rod Charlie. I love them shipping in for the added distance. I love that he has the race under his belt locally before the ship, and I'm just a believer in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And some might say it didn't work out for Jackie's Warrior or Keep Me in Mind in their 3-year-old debuts, but there were that to me, there's just other stuff going on with the weather and the races they were pointing to, and we'll see what happens with Keep Me in Mind. But I do think Hot Rod Charlie's Breeders' Cup was legit, and he ran behind a Baffert pair in his 3-year-old debut, and I think he's here to take another step forward with the added distance.
And Rosario doesn't hurt.
No, yeah, that's certainly a positive, and I think the Mountain 3/16. We talk about it a lot with the Preakness, and it's sort of a distance on people's minds, but reality is it's a trick. It's a little different than a Mountain Eighth for sure, especially given the fairgrounds configuration. So having someone like that ship in is absolutely a positive.
How about the girls?
I really was salivating when I first dug in what seems like weeks ago, but earlier this week. And I think Travel Column and Clairiere are both vulnerable. Unfortunately, it just sounds more and more that I'm not alone in that sentiment. And I do think Will Tootsie has a big shot, but I'm going to have to be willing to sit on my hands if she takes too much money. It just seems like she's the go-to and obligatory to a smaller extent. But I thought Will Tootsie's last two races just signal a filly absolutely going in the right direction. And as great as I'm sure it was to win the Kentucky Oaks, I'm guessing Tom Amos and Dr. Pilati would certainly love avenging Serengeti Empress's loss 2 years ago with this filly. I think she fits, but at the beginning of the week, I'm thinking, with all the money on the top two, we might get 6-1 on her. But I think that's a pipe dream at this point, and the morning line maker agrees. So just going to have to play the board cautiously, but she's definitely the one I'm most excited to bet if people gravitate towards the chalk.
Okay. All right. Keep moving back through this pick five, the Muniz.
Another instance. I came into the week excited about Colonel Liam shipping in and thinking maybe he's the lean. But the more I look, the more I have to agree with Papo. He's maybe the best by a hair. Certainly with the class and shades of bricks and mortar in terms of his development and the race he came in, off the Pegasus turf and coming into here. But gosh, at this price, to me, it's a spread race, and maybe my opportunity with Lil Tootsie is in the pick 5. Just really willing to lean on her as a single. I don't care what she is in the win pool. I have a hard time believing she'd have anything more than 25%. The pick ends, given people are going to want to protect, so to speak,
sure,
with the obvious horses. So maybe that's the opportunity. And Munez certainly a spread for me, and definitely would, after just crunching the numbers and looking at how close these turf horses really are, trying to beat Colonel Liam.
Yeah, I've had that same conclusion repeatedly, but he just keeps getting better. That's right. I mean,
I was against him in the turf, and I liked both his stablemates, as a matter of fact. And at different points of the race, I thought I was the winner. And by the time we got into the final 16th, I knew I was beat by the better horse. So that certainly could happen again here. And it's all about being agile. Is a better. If enough people kind of have this thought, maybe he slips away at a bettable price, but it just seems like in a spot where maybe people are going to be looking to spread elsewhere, especially the Louisiana Derby, I think, get live to a bunch in the last. He sort of makes sense as one of the leans. But, at the same time, as we work back through this, there's two very imposing horses in legs 1 and 2 as well. So this definitely feels like sort of the multiple ticket approach, where you're not necessarily trying to cover a bunch of horses who can win, but covering when the chalks do win. What options do you give yourself for a price elsewhere?
Sure. Well, let's talk about those other two. The pick 4 starts with the New Orleans Classic, and there's been some varying levels of confidence approaching this. Where are you headed?
Well, with Mystic Guide already headed to his destination next week, and Maxfield having run last week or 2 weeks ago in the Big Cap, this to me sort of fell in Owendale's lap, and he does seem to kind of be the horse that wins these types of races like he's supposed to, and then just never quite at that next level punches the ticket. I do see him as the most likely winner here. For sure, and I agree with my friend and colleague Gary Palmisano that although I've sort of talked myself into Little Tootsie being the single, but I think in terms of the most likely winner to lean on, Owendale would be it for me in this sequence.
All right. And then we've got the female version of the Muniz, essentially, this Tom Benson, 13 horses, and any number of ways to go.
Yeah, I think, this is maybe an opportunity to take advantage of the pari-mutuel mindset of bettors that might tend to spread a little bit more early to stay alive. And I'm likely to be guilty of that, I guess, to some extent here, just because I do have Owendale and Little Tootsie to lean on, where, I can sort of blanket any horse I think can win, especially if they're going to be a price. But that said, and heard Papo talking about the tool he uses, and when I ran the race through Always Every Which Way, Delica was the overwhelming choice, no matter how the race was modeled. So I am gonna, it's gonna be hard for me to shy away from my employer's data leaning to her so heavily, but I do think with this type of race and that many horses, and just the way the prep for it played out, I find her maybe, a vulnerable single in my mind, but the data is unquestionably pointing in her direction.
Fair enough. All right. So early on, Delica and Owendale as strong leans, strong A's for Ed to then get into the late pick 3 and have some other some other prices to weave in. Ed,
yeah, I definitely would say it's a gamble, but I think just given the horses I've given out, Travel Column and Clarier, the two I'm just going to have to beat no matter what. I can't see a path to profit linking them up with the others I've mentioned.
Fair enough. All right. Next week, of course, Ed, I'm guessing you're going up to Turfway?
I'll be there, yep. Jeff Ruby Stakes.
Excellent. So we'll look forward to that. And, of course, Florida and Meydan as well. What's been the dining experience so far this week?
So I did the char-grilled oysters. That was Felix's last night.
Nice.
Did a Cajun omelet this morning, which was absolutely incredible. Not sure how they made their sausage, but, just the spice to perfection, and was really pleased. I ended up at Streetcar Cafe, and then, of course, Louisiana Derby Day. We missed it last year, but back to the 2019 roots in Houdat Cafe.
Good job. I love it. All right, send pictures, and we can live vicariously. Ed, good luck this weekend. Any basketball notions?
I'm hoping Colgate and Ohio State meet in the Elite Eight, Steve.
From your mouth to God's ears. Well said. Good job, Ed. Ed DeRose, everybody. EJXD2. And watch for the videos, Twin Spires, and opt in. Don't forget, this is obviously your only leaderboard. We'll get a big leaderboard update the next couple of weeks, but don't forget to get your leaderboard pick in for tomorrow for the Louisiana Derby. And there it is. Obviously, I knew we were going to be heavy on fairgrounds coverage, so that was fun. Going to send you out into the weekend, and as I promised, we want to give you a taste of some collegiate boosterism. All right, if you don't have anybody to root for in 45 minutes as you tune in for Colgate and Arkansas, get the Red Raiders home today, and then ideally, knock on wood, to Sunday even. So Monday, I might have forgotten about this game already, or I'll be sky high. Good luck if you're playing, everybody, and go Gate.
When through thy valley fair Shenango twilight falls, bringing in silence to our college halls. In that happy moment of for all our mater swells, and our hearts outpouring of her glory tells. Colgate, alma mater, fairest theme of all our days. Colgate, alma mater, ever bless thy days. Far from thy valley, yearly rode thy loving ones, yet in their dreaming ere thy name returns. 'Tis that same fond spirit which thy memory lingers o'er, and our lips but echo that old song of yore. Colgate, alma mater, fairest theme of all our days. Colgate, alma mater, ever bless thy days. Colgate, alma mater, fairest theme of all our days. Colgate, alma mater, ever bless thy days.
racing news. It's At the Races with Steve Bick on Sirius XM Radio.
Why, in the past decade, has BRL Equine become the premier equine supplement company in the industry? Because we spend millions in research and development before we ever put out a product. Because we use only FDA-supervised facilities to manufacture for us. Because what we say is in them is in them. Because they work. Because if you're not happy, I'll give you your money back. And because top trainers and veterinarians in thoroughbred racing, standardbred racing, 3-day eventing, and barrel racing all trust in BRL Equine. Shouldn't you? To find out more how Flexify HA, Unlock, Bleeder Shield, and EPO Equine can help you, contact me, Joseph Volante, 215-501-6880.
There's a great story to tell in Pennsylvania. Only 3 states have produced more Breeders' Cup champions, and no state can match our performance in recent years. Since 2016, our numbers of mares bred has skyrocketed, unlike the national trend. And this year's live foal report shows Pennsylvania up over 50%. Why? Our incentives and bonuses are the best in North America. Please visit us at pabred.com and see why Pennsylvania is the premier place to breed and race.